Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Today we have a very special guest, Bill Fairman.
Do not get discouraged when things look bad. There's two things you can account for: black swan event and bad actor.
This gentleman has been through so many trials and tribulations as a co-founder, and today he's going to lean into the highs, the lows, the greatness that comes with being a co-founder and having a partnership in business.
We brought in a third partner, ended up having to take $6.8 million loss in 1 quarter because of what he had done.
With his experience, you're going to see the struggle, the successes, and everything that occurs in a partnership. We're super excited to have Bill join us on this show, and welcome to the show, Bill. Welcome to January, Bill.
Yes, I love winter. Not.
Oh. Welcome to the show. We really appreciate you having here. I took a quick glance at some of your personal hobbies and stuff like that. If you want to share with the guests kind of what makes you tick, let's let them get to know you a little bit.
Sure. Before I get started, though, I have to say you have the most unique windscreen on your microphone I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, you like that?
Yes.
That's hand painted.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, dude. Let me show you guys. So if you just spin it, so it's got like my wife and I love to travel, so it's got like a compass there. So basically, everything that I love in life, hiking, camping, outdoors, it's all built onto this thing. So custom to me.
That's really nice. What makes me tick? That's a complicated question. I'm well diversified. Listen, I'm in the Charlotte market, but I have a second home in the western side of the Gulf of South Florida. I love doing inshore saltwater fishing. I love fishing in a foot of water.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of fun doing that. And then in between, when you are fishing, you're doing it while the water is moving. And what I mean by that is when the tides are changing, that's when the fish are biting.
Sure.
And when the water is still, they're taking a break, and that's when I go over to the little isolated islands and hang out on the beach. And then when the water starts moving it again, I go back out fishing. What really makes me tick is I love solving problems, and that's why I'm in the financial services industry. It's mainly on the mortgage side of things. When you're in that industry, all you're doing is problem solving, and what it does is it always keeps you interested. Things are always evolving and changing, and so it never gets boring.
Before we dive into today's episode, one thing I'm always curious on is how did you find us, and what attracted you to our podcast?
Well, what attracted me at the beginning was the name, Never in Reverse, and that's kind of my mantra here. You're always moving forward. No matter what happens, you're always having to move forward. If you have to reinvent yourself. I started off in the dental field, and I'm in financial services. So what my professor in dental school, the first thing he said, there are no straight lines in nature. And what he was referring to is making teeth, and people want to make a tooth look like a chiclet. And so he's pointing out there's no straight lines in nature, but that works as well through life in general. You're always going to have ups, downs, obstacles to overcome, and the Never in Reverse really got my attention.
Well, we appreciate it. Well, today's episode is kind of something that you might hit me internally when we go through some of these things that you're going to share with our viewers. What holds co-founders together, and that topic actually, it really resonates with me. I'm excited to get your perspective and your experiences with this, and what's kept you moving forward in those tough times, because I know what's kept me. I know some pain. It's probably similar in some ways to yours, but and weathering that storm. The first topic we're gonna go through is weathering that storm together, and the importance of when you go into business and your experience as a co-founder, the pressure together when you're starting off, when you had partners, what it looked like to establish that, and the excitement that I think as entrepreneurs, we all go through that first month, man, when you're setting this up. just dive into that, and then we'll kind of go through the maturity of what your experience um, has been, and then kind of some of that, the craziness I can see you've experienced.
Yeah, well, I think our experience was a little unique in starting off. I mean, we were obviously bootstrapped, everything, um, eh, but we were very fortunate. Um, we were in an investor community, real estate investing community, where we were almost in an incubator situation. My sister and I are partners, and then we eventually brought in another partner. But starting off, um, my sister was working for another real estate investor, and we were doing loans as kind of a side thing. And he said, "Hey, why don't you make a company out of this?" And provided us with an office, the phones, the internet, everything we needed. Of course, we were making loans to his students, so it was a benefit for him. But we were able to start this business with next to nothing because our costs were next to nothing. And then uh, within about 2 years, we're actually renting a whole wing off of his space. He had an office complex that he was renting out to other people while he had his own. And then we were able to take over a whole wing of that thing because it started growing so much. And I give a lot of credit to him helping us get started. And then we make mortgage loans to real estate investors. And where do we get the money to do that? Well, we started off with folks that had uh, self-directed IRA accounts, and we knew people that needed money, and we knew people who had money that they needed to get a return on. And so we would just broker the two together and charge a fee for it to the borrower. And that's how it got started with us. It was everything moves into a different season, and this season there was a lot of work putting a bunch of pieces of the puzzle together. So that was a lot of fun. And what's interesting is when you're starting off in basically an office with two people in it, and we're back to back with a desk, and we had a part-time bookkeeper in the same office. We're both on the phone, my sister and I, and we both assume that each of us can hear what the other one is saying, but that is not the case at all.
Oh, because you're laser focused and
Yeah.
you're going, and not to cut you off, but like, those starting years, the pressure and the focus and weathering that storm together. So I think, you know, those initial times when you're doing this and is everyone putting in the same amount of time? Is there a high level of accountability? Are you guys focused together on the same? Because you got to be moving, but you got to be agile. Do you remember those feelings of just, that those storms? There's a lot of them when you first start out, and they're big. They feel big, right? Every
Oh, sure.
movement feels much bigger when you're small than not.
Yeah, it was all about a paycheck. We just wanted to make
Yeah.
enough money to, pay the bills, get a paycheck that week. You got pressure to help the customers. You have pressure to make sure that the investor is going to win as well, and then obviously the pressure that we're going to be able to make a living and to see this thing going forward. Fortunately for us, we were in the right place at the right time, and the business continued to grow. And again, the pressures changed then. So yeah, we're making enough money to make a living, and as you're growing. Because of that, the pressure now is how do we become more efficient and are able to scale? Uh, you have to completely change the way you do business in order to scale. We were dealing again with individuals with individual money making loans. We had to switch to starting a fund so we'd have a pool of money to lend out of. And that changes completely, because when you're dealing with the individuals that were making loans, you're dealing with active investors because they're all a part of the deal. And when you start a fund, they have to be passive investors. So now you have to find a whole new group of people to invest with. So there was pressure there as well, raising capital and going forward. But, fortunately, my sister and I get along very well. We've got 5 siblings in the family. We have a pretty close-knit family. So the benefit of having your sister as a partner at the time is that we could say what we needed to say, and we didn't take any of it personally because it would just, roll off our back and keep moving. It's hard to do that with someone that's not family.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting at. I mean, drawing that fine line between family and getting in the way and just holding that together. You gotta draw family is one thing and business is the other, right? There's gotta be a direct line that is mutually respected, I think, when you have partnerships. Because you can start, especially as success gets in the way, as you guys have evolved, you're gonna have trust. You guys start moving forward, you get higher levels of revenue. I think, and I've gone through this too, where sometimes your ego starts getting in the way. You think you made it, or whatever those internal dialogues you tell yourself, and the partnerships, especially when you're dealing with family. Um, you know, the reality of that is something that's always uh, you got to be cohesive as a unit if those things start to trickle in from one of your partners or team members or not. But what did you find that just, as you keep growing and evolving with making sure that dialogue between, the trust and communication with your team and your sister doesn't allow, these personal things to get in the middle? What have you done to make sure that you guys keep united?
Well, like I said, we have a pretty close-knit family. We made sure that we had daily and weekly huddles too. That way, all of us are on the same page. So open and honest dialogue is always helpful. Sometimes it's not happy dialogue, but at least it's open and honest.
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
that is always better than having something that's, kind of building internally that, might kind of explode at some point, or at least hold resentment. And you can't do that. Those daily and weekly huddles really helped us out.
Yeah, and I think clearing, just being clear with that other person and making sure that, and you don't have to agree with,
No,
not, but you have to do it in a way that's not disrespectful or,
absolutely.
but I think it's also like you're saying, don't the resentment, you don't want to hold that back when you're having partnerships. The complexities as you grow, the stakes when you first start are so low because there's no revenue. So there's
Right,
nothing to lose. But
right,
as you evolve, and life presents itself to maybe the other member in a different way. Maybe they go through a divorce or certain things are, that's typically shows up because they are your business partner. And I think it's super important to not hold back, to not withhold, to keep clear communication. And the reality of that is a lot of people don't see that behind closed doors is that there are tough decisions to make. Sometimes the ego does get in the way. Sometimes there are disrespectful comments, but I think, going through that, being open and maybe saying sorry or doing just building that relationship where there's a mutual trust that's safe is important, right? Like, especially to withstand the test of time.
well, I can tell you, it's different with family. Like I said, we can say stuff that you can't really say to people that aren't the family and not
Yeah.
have it taken personally. So I know there were some points during the business discussions that the folks around us got uncomfortable. And then we would
100%.
have to have a huddle with the staff and say, hey, you guys understand we still love each other, even though we might snap a little bit. I don't want you guys to be uncomfortable. We
Absolutely.
are family. That kind of stuff does happen occasionally, but we've been in business together now since 2011. So if I mean that's a long time for siblings
14
to
years, right?
be in
Yeah.
business. Yeah, be in business together, and you're always, like I said, you're always going to have up and down times, and you just have to be open and honest as you can. You can't always tell exactly what's going on with the business with the entire staff and when it happens. you still have to, I say temper what you have to say, because, they're worried about their jobs as well. And then you don't want rumors to get started, but as soon as you are able to discuss, you need to discuss. And I'm talking about with your staff, with your investors, with your customers as well.
Yeah. So this is going to be a crazy flip because this is the most intriguing part for me about you and your story is trust. I want you to go back and share with the viewers that crazy part of your career and what happened to you around this when you brought in that partner and your experience. Viewers, this is a 180 from where we're at, and I think it's one of the most important things to hear so that you can learn from Bill's experience that to always keep a pulse,
Yeah.
right? So
So I am 67 years old, and I'm looking for that exit. And I don't mean complete exit, because I still love what I do. I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to retire,
sure,
but I do want to slow down and enjoy some things. So we brought in a third partner, mid 30s, so we could actually eventually turn things over to him, so we could step back a little bit. And um, and by the way, we're still in litigation, so everything I'm saying is allegedly.
sure.
Um, so we brought this fella in, and we worked with him for a year and a half with another company before we ever brought him in. So we had a good idea of what kind of character he was, and he seemed to fit well. And after about 5 years, we brought in a COO, and this COO actually found some discrepancies, we will say, in some of the accounting and loans that were going on, and it just got worse from there. So long story short, we ended up having to take a $6.8 million loss in one quarter because of what
Oh,
he had done. And what that meant for our investors is that they were going to get about a 30% cut in their balance, their portfolio. I mean, that's hard to tell people when you're averaging 8.5, 9%, since the beginning, 14 years, that's a good return. And then you turn around and tell people, I have to take a third of your money away. That's not good. That said, we basically escorted him out of the building, and, the lawsuit, followed. But the hard part is that we're entrusted with other people's money.
mhm.
And how do you handle that? Not just the partnership thing, but how do you handle the bad news to the people that have entrusted you with their money?
I think that's one thing, like, just think about, like, that chaos coming in, and I can only understand what you're feeling at that moment, and, you got a team, you got a culture, um, now you got ownership, right? You got some things that you found out that were happening sooner or later, thankfully, and now you gotta keep everyone, even though you might be in a very fearful state, that's a big 6.7 million is a lot of money. And, you still gotta keep your team in the direction of moving forward, right? So building that culture that can, resist these moments is also important, especially within you, right? Because it's a moment of time that will also pass and it might not feel like it at times, and I'm sure you sometimes it feels like a boat anchor because of maybe the shame and guilt that comes with that of letting people down. I mean, there's a lot of personal things that happen, but I still think that you gotta keep everyone moving in the direction of being in a positive motion to withstand those moments, because if you sit in that moment, you're gonna just be part of it, and that's not gonna serve anyone, right? You gotta be very careful in that leadership role on how you allow those things to creep in, especially if you're feeling it, right? Because I felt some things in my leadership position, founder, and I feel it all the time. And
Sure.
that's that, but that too is my feeling. That's my responsibility to me. So what do you think that you've done, when you're struggling in these moments to kind of keep the team positive and moving in the right direction? Because that's tough.
Yeah. One of the things, though, that really helped us out is that we've always been a big believer in mastermind groups. We've invested in ourselves over the years with masterminds because although being an owner in a business doesn't seem like it's a team sport, it needs to be. And mastermind groups are super helpful because you're able to discuss things with other business owners that you can't even discuss with your spouse. Because in my case, my wife is not built to be an entrepreneur. She is a nester. And
I can
I,
relate.
I have to know when to tell her certain things, because if you say, hey, we had a great year, all of a sudden the Amazon bill gets really big. And then if you
Yeah,
say,
be
hey,
careful.
things aren't going great, then, oh my God, you're going out of business. So it's not any kind of an even keel thing. But as an entrepreneur, you always, that there's ebbs and flows. So it's very helpful to speak with other entrepreneurs. By the way, if you're in a group of other entrepreneurs, they've probably gone through a lot of these same things before. So it's nice to have that conversation before it happens. That way it doesn't happen to you. And when it does happen, you get some really, really good advice. And that's exactly what we did. We knew we had a problem. How are we now going to communicate that with our investors? How are we going to communicate that with our team? And we reached out to other people in our mastermind group, had great input. We took input from several, and it couldn't have gone better. I will tell you that we have 87 investors in that fund. We ended up making a phone call to every single one of them, explained exactly what was going on. We also did a live town hall Zoom call to bring them all together so they can continue to ask questions. We do a bi-monthly email letting them know exactly what's going on. We still have the monthly town hall getting all the questions. When people asked questions, we didn't identify who the person was that asked the question, but we would list the question in the emails that we sent out so they could hear questions that other people are asking in case they might have had the same questions themselves and getting them answered. So we were it was just great advice that we got from others. Out of those 87, we only had 5 people that wanted their money back.
That's
Pretty
great.
shocking.
Yeah, and the chaos, that those moments of chaos are the ones that I think make you the strongest. You got to go through those moments, and you can create a lot of structure and integrity and transparency and being authentic. Those things to your team and leading through hard times or difficult growth periods, because as growing's not. Sometimes it's harder than not. Getting those groups like you talked about and having that executive group that you can go through, and they already got the sweat equity. Sometimes, a lot of the times, they have the answers because they've dealt with a bad partner or someone that stole or whatever you've gone through. They typically already have gone through that, and they're going to share with you what the results look like to make sure that you don't go make those same mistakes. I'm in a group too, and so I fully understand. It's like you don't realize how valuable that is until you go do that, because they're in your shoe. They're basically doing the same thing you are, maybe in a different industry, but the end result is the same.
What I want to stress is that if you have that group around you, you have to utilize them. When stuff like this happens, yes, it's very embarrassing, and your first tendency is, I'm not telling anybody that this is going on because it's going to make me look bad. But that's the wrong way to do it. You need to reach out and ask for help, because they're in a group for a reason. They want to help. They want to be helpful. They want to do everything they can to make each other successful around them, and that's why those groups are there in the first place.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think as we wind this down, Bill, I think, getting back to the main topic, this holding the co-founders together. I mean, you guys could easily break apart during these times, but I think the resiliency, the trust, the sweat equity that you guys have gone through, for 14 years, what do you think, just for the viewers, what do you think that most people misunderstand about co-founder relationships? What do you think are some things to understand if they're looking at getting into a partnership that they might not understand?
Well, my attitude on it is never partner, always hire. Um, you
I can relate to that.
you can, if you look back on it, you still need that help. You can still pay people like partners without actually having them uh, as a partner. What happens when things go south? It's the divorce, the breakup that gets. If you are going to bring in a partner, make sure that you cover the exit. What happens when things go bad? How it's going to be? How this is going to happen? If you decide to split up, decide in advance before you ever sign the documents that this is
Mhm.
how a breakup is going to occur, and these are the steps that are going to take place. Otherwise,
Yeah,
it turns into, like I said, a nasty divorce.
I can relate to that. I think for years, it's like the moment you think it's enough, it's probably likely not. I would go seek counsel with people that have done it. Um, and I think it's important to set that stage on the front end and have a process around the live working document, and you revisit it as you grow. I think that's something to, because as people have kids, they go, we've done a lot of structuring around that where it's like, man, what is it? What happens if this happens with the spouse? How does that conduct filter in, and making sure that those things are aligned? Because if they're not, you're exactly right. It could get really, really dicey for you and your personal experiences inside the business, or what you want, or it takes a toll on you as a person, right? If it's
Sure.
not done correctly.
And
So go
I
ahead.
was going to say, it's a lot easier to do it on the front end when everybody's happy. It's not as easy to do it when folks are not happy.
Yeah. And one last question for viewers. Future founders, what's one thing you'd want them to take away from your 30 years plus experience?
Do not get discouraged when things look bad. Think again, I'll go back to that. There are no straight lines in nature. There's always seasons. There's two things you can't account for: black swan events and bad actors. The last thing is just be open and honest with your partners, your staff, your customers. That comes with making sure that you have the right culture inside of your business. And I don't mean just the staff. I mean customers as well. Believe me, I have fired customers. I don't just tell them I'm not doing business with them. I
Mhm.
like to say that, you deserve a lot more attention than I can give you. That's the best way to fire a customer, and do it on a nice level, if you want to say it that way. You know the old saying that 20% of your customers are the ones that give you 80% of the trouble, and you end up 80% that do it the right way are the ones that are giving you most of the income, but the 20% is who you're spending all the time with. You need to get rid of those 20% too.
Yeah,
So your customers, your investors, um, I like in the real estate world, we talk about ROI, return on investment. I also like to use ROE, return on effort.
Mhm.
That's very important because life is too short.
Absolutely. Just as we wind this down, what's the true meaning of never in reverse for you?
Really, for me, it's facing the consequences, and that had to do with making those phone calls for me. Um, I knew the phone calls were not going to be great, but as you make them, you will find out that it's not nearly as bad as you think they're going to be on the front end. And once you get through the tough times, the better times are going to seem that much more incredible.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Bill Fairman, for joining us, reminding us that strong partnerships aren't built on easy seasons, and they're forged in the moments that test us during really challenging times, such as that, right?
Yep.
Facing those phone calls, 80 plus phone calls, and wondering what that person's going to say, is that's where it's built at. That's the trust. And to our listeners, whether you're building a business, a friendship, or dream, don't avoid failure. Always lean into it. I think failure is that beautiful blessing that has something on the other side that's gonna show you it's that much better because you've pushed through those moments.
Failure is not failure unless you fail to learn from failure.
100%. So make sure you guys follow Carolina Capital and check out their website. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Never Reverse. Again, cold January. Like, subscribe, follow us on all platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Thank you so much, Bill, for joining us. Until next time, guys, we appreciate your time and have a wonderful day. Thanks, Bill.